He was a man who lived for flavor. Alfons Schuhbeck, a name synonymous with culinary artistry. From humble beginnings, he rose to become a titan of the German food scene. A maestro of spices, a conductor of taste. His restaurants, legendary. His cookbooks, bestsellers. His name, whispered with reverence in kitchens across the country. He was a star, burning bright. Schuhbeck wasn't just a chef, he was a showman. Charisma oozed from him like butter on a hot stove. He could charm the pants off a duchess while simultaneously explaining the nuances of saffron. He had it all: talent, fame, fortune. He was on top of the world, and nothing, it seemed, could stop his ascent. Schuhbeck's world was a symphony of taste. He wielded spices like a painter used color. A pinch of this, a dash of that. And suddenly, the ordinary transformed into the extraordinary. He traveled the globe, seeking out exotic ingredients, unlocking their secrets. He brought the world's flavors back to Germany, sharing his discoveries with anyone who dared to take a bite. He wasn't afraid to experiment, to push boundaries. He blended traditional Bavarian cuisine with global influences, creating culinary masterpieces that tantalized the palate and expanded the mind. His restaurants were temples of gastronomy. People lined up for hours, eager to experience the magic that happened within those hallowed halls. To taste Schuhbeck's food was to embark on a culinary adventure. Schuhbeck's fame wasn't confined to the kitchen. He was a celebrity in his own right, a fixture on television screens across Germany. He was the go-to chef for politicians, movie stars, and everyone in between. He cooked for Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator himself, charmed by Schuhbeck's wit and culinary wizardry. They shared laughs, meals, and a mutual appreciation for the finer things in life. His annual Weisswurst party was legendary, a who's who of German society. Politicians rubbed shoulders with actors, musicians mingled with athletes, all united by their love of Schuhbeck's food and his infectious personality. He was living the dream, surrounded by the rich and famous. His name whispered in the corridors of power, but even in the brightest light, shadows can lurk. The first whispers started subtly. Rumors of financial irregularities. Whispers of shady dealings. At first, they were dismissed as envious mutterings, the price of success in a cutthroat world. But where there's smoke, there's often fire. The rumors persisted, growing louder, more insistent. The authorities took notice, launching an investigation into Schuhbeck's sprawling business empire. The pressure mounted. The man who once seemed invincible was now on the defensive, his carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. The world watched, holding its breath as the drama unfolded. Denials were issued, explanations offered, but the damage was done. The seeds of doubt had been sown, and they were beginning to sprout like weeds in the garden of his success. Section 5. The empire crumbles. The walls closed in. The investigation, once a whisper, became a roar. Tax evasion, the authorities alleged, on a massive scale. Millions of euros hidden away, siphoned from the coffers of his once thriving empire. The man who had flown so high was now crashing back to earth. His restaurants, once bustling with life, stood empty, their tables gathering dust. His name, once synonymous with culinary excellence, was now splashed across the front pages of newspapers, but not in a good way. His world, so carefully constructed, was collapsing around him. The laughter died down, the parties ceased, the glitterati moved on to the next shiny object. He was alone, stripped of his fame and fortune, facing the consequences of his actions. The fall from grace was swift and brutal, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones throughout the culinary world. The price of hubris, some said; others, a simple lack of judgment. Whatever the reason, the damage was done. The courtroom was a cold, sterile place, a far cry from the warmth and aroma of Schuhbeck's kitchens. He stood trial, his face etched with stress and regret, as the prosecution meticulously laid out their case. The verdict, when it came, was swift and merciless. guilty. Schuhbeck, the culinary genius, the darling of the elite, was now a convicted criminal, sentenced to years behind bars. He was stripped of his liberty, his dignity, his legacy. The man who had once commanded the attention of a nation was now just another inmate, another number in the system. The world moved on, the news cycle churning relentlessly. Schuhbeck's story, once a source of fascination, was relegated to the back pages, a footnote in the annals of fallen stars. Gone were the clanging pots and pans, the sizzle of butter in a hot pan, the symphony of flavors that had defined his life. Now, the only sounds were the clanging bars and the shuffling feet of fellow inmates. He traded his chef's whites for a prison uniform, his days measured out in endless hours. No more exotic spices, no more culinary creations, just the bland, institutional food that stuck in his throat like sawdust. The man who once charmed celebrities and dignitaries now spent his days in the company of thieves and con men. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had fallen far and there was no one to blame but himself. He spent his days reflecting on his past, on the choices that had led him to this dark place. Regret gnawed at him like a rat in the walls, a constant reminder of what he had lost. The name Schuhbeck, once a guarantee of quality, was forever tainted. His cookbooks, once bestsellers, gathered dust on shelves, their pages filled with recipes that now tasted bittersweet. His restaurants, once symbols of his success, stood empty, their windows boarded up, monuments to his downfall. The empire he had built, brick by culinary brick, lay in ruins. The world remembered him as a talented chef, a charismatic showman, but also as a cautionary tale. A reminder that even the brightest stars can fall, that success can be fleeting, and that the price of arrogance can be steep. He had expressed remorse, accepted responsibility for his actions, but the damage was done. His legacy, once assured, was now forever tarnished by the shadow of his crimes. Years stretched ahead of him, each one a tick of the clock in the slow, agonizing march of time. He was a shadow of his former self, his spirit broken, his body weary. But even in the darkness, a flicker of hope remained. He had time to reflect, time to atone, time to perhaps find a measure of redemption. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but every journey, even one that begins in despair, starts with a single step. What now for the fallen star? Only time would tell.